Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Football League podcast. I'm Fred, and today I'm joined by Chris, who is going to be giving us a few updates on some of the hottest transfer topics out there at the moment. But before we get going, I just wanted to say thank you for 500 subscribers. We hit 500 subscribers a couple of days ago, so thank you to all of those of you who are subscribed. If you want to show some love for the channel, make sure to hit the thumbs up button. Subscribe if you are new, hit the notification bell as well to make sure you don't miss any videos as and when they are uploaded. But as I said, I'm joined by Chris, who's going to be giving us some transfer updates. Chris, how are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad, Fred. Not too bad. Yeah, firstly, I'd like to thank you for the 500 subscribers on YouTube. That's a good achievement for us. We've only been really doing this for a short time. We've got a lot of good plans in the future, so I'm really grateful for that. Obviously, we've got a few little transfers to go through, not too many, but there are a few significant transfers to discuss, just some of the details around there. And then towards the end, we'll talk about transfer negotiations and how they work, because I think there's a lot of confusion around how it's handled. A lot of Twitter people think it's just a light switch, so I'll talk about that in a bit. So you want to start us with the first player?
Yeah, we're going to start with Martin Odegaard. He was at Arsenal last season. It seemed like he was going to stay at Real Madrid for the upcoming season, but we've seen a shift, and it looks like he's on his way out of Real Madrid again. Can you give us the layers on Odegaard?
Yeah, so I checked about Martin Odegaard because there was a lot of talk that Arsenal still wanted him, and of course he had a fairly good season, well, half a season, wasn't it, on loan for Arsenal, and he was quite effective in that number 10 role where the attacking midfielder position. So Arsenal are ready to bid for the player, as you've seen. So I did check; they are willing to pay what Real Madrid are looking for, which is around 50 million euros, which is quite a lot of money for someone who hasn't really proven himself massively. But they feel he's a good prospect still, and he's still very young. So Arsenal are definitely going to go and bid for him if Real Madrid make him available. There's still a lot of reports going around saying that he's available. That hasn't been communicated officially yet between both clubs, but Arsenal have publicly said through natural sources that they would prepare to bid for this particular player, and it's someone that Arteta definitely wants. So I would keep an eye on that one, and if Real Madrid say yes, Ancelotti has said that he can't put him in his starting 11, and Odegaard wants to be playing week in, week out because he's suffered in the last few years with that, and he's been going out on loan a lot. So he wants a permanent residence at a club, and he enjoyed his time at Arsenal. That goodbye post that he put, you could clearly see that he didn't want to leave. So there's a lot of stuff going on in the background, and we'll see in the coming weeks for sure. But it does look increasingly likely that Arsenal are ready to bid and sign that player, which is someone they definitely need for their strikers because they have struggled with that.
Yeah, 100%. Well, let's say Odegaard does end up at Arsenal. What does that mean for James Maddison at Leicester? Because we know that Arsenal have significant interest for the player, but it looks like he's kind of being priced out of the move. What's the situation on that?
So with James Maddison, there was a lot of reports going out saying that he was expecting the move, and I dispelled that quite early on, which some people might have seen in Twitter, where I said, no, that's not the case. James Maddison, there's nothing advanced for him. Leicester still count on him next season. I haven't heard anything to say James Maddison is unhappy to not leave Leicester. So he seems quite happy to stay there at the club, and it would cost Arsenal around £70 million for James Maddison, which is quite a lot. So there's nothing advanced with James Maddison. I expect him to fully stay at Leicester City and fight for his place. And Leicester have made some decent signings. And no disrespect to Arsenal, they're still, they've jumped ahead of them in recent seasons. So there would be no expectations for James Maddison to leave this summer. And I could say Arsenal's interest was there. They were very interested in the player, but there was nothing advanced, and Leicester weren't willing to negotiate the price down. So he will remain at Leicester this season, and I don't think that's a problem for James Maddison. He hasn't really kicked off. Next season, it could be an option for another club like Liverpool or Arsenal or Spurs, or one of the top clubs could look at him next season. But I fully expect him to stay now because there's not a lot of clubs that can afford to put £70 million on one player
Yeah,
outside of the top six and a couple of clubs abroad. So definitely staying at the moment.
yeah. Well, what does that mean for Jesse Lingard at Manchester United? Because we know Leicester would have been interested in him if Maddison was to leave, and we know West Ham are still interested as well.
Yeah, I mean Lingard is there's a lot of talk about him staying at the club. Ollie's not too concerned if he does stay, but I'd keep an eye out on that situation because from what I know, he is available in the market. So it's just about someone paying the right fee. A lot of clubs are just waiting until the end of the window so that the transfer fee goes down. But Man United are not willing to go under £20 million. And also, Jesse Lingard won't leave on a free next season. He would sign an extension if it doesn't happen. So I can see maybe a late move for Jesse Lingard, but we just need to keep an eye on that situation as it goes. So it's been communicated to me that some clubs are interested in him, but Manchester United either way won't lose out on it as such, as he might sign a new contract. But there's a lot of talk around Jesse Lingard being second to Bruno Fernandes or his backup, but I can't imagine Jesse Lingard after this half a season he had with West Ham would want to do that, despite the reports saying he does. He does want to play, and there's the opportunity of being in the World Cup next season. So Jesse Lingard won't want to sit on the bench, Fred. So he will want to look for a move as soon as he can. It's just been done in a respectful way because he's been playing for Man United since he was a kid. So
Yeah,
just one of those things that we need to keep an eye out on that towards the end of the window.
yeah. Well, if Lingard was to leave, what's the price? What price are we looking at?
20 million to 25. You're not going to get 30 million for someone who's last year in their contract.
Yeah,
But Man United are probably looking for 25 million so they can reinvest it in another signing. And as I said, that has a knock-on effect. If Jesse Lingard leaves, and then obviously Ahmed Diallo goes on loan, they would look at maybe having an additional signing on top of the third signing. So you've got to keep an eye out on a couple of these situations.
yeah. Yeah, well, moving on, a big name. I mean, over the past few weeks, Harry Kane has been one of the hottest names in the transfer market. We've heard from people like Fabrizio Romano that Manchester City are preparing a new €150 million bid for Harry Kane, which is a lot of money. What update can you give us on Kane's situation?
Well, the first thing is that Harry Kane wants to leave Spurs, and that's I'm not telling you news here. That's an obvious situation that happened during the Euros. But what we know is, and I did say this a while ago, that the Manchester City will do another bid. Their first bid was to make Harry Kane realise that they're very much interested in signing him. So I fully expect Manchester City to come in with a bid. It's just whether Tottenham will accept it. But if they're looking at €150 million bid, which is what's been reported, then Spurs will be seriously considering that and to reinvest it into another striker this summer. So I can still see Harry Kane moving, but it would have to be done in the next 10 days because I don't think this is one that will be in the last week of the window, because at that point Spurs will find it difficult to find another replacement. So next 10 days will be crucial in what happens with Harry Kane. But Manchester City will be able to pay for 150 million, and then there will be some additional add-ons on that. But what you have to remember is people were complaining about Manchester City, spending all of that money, but they have generated a lot of sales in the past, Fred, so which they haven't used. So we have to be mindful that they're able to fly under the radar, as I've said, with that. So it's likely they can get Harry Kane. We just need to wait for Spurs. In the next 10 days, there will be a resolution, next days or so. But Harry Kane is still quietly pushing for that move. I know there was some stuff around him not training, but I believe that that's all been, washed under the carpet now as a PR movement, and the club asked him to apologise and stuff. But he's still trying to negotiate an exit because he wants Champions League football now. He doesn't want to wait. And let's be honest, Spurs, although they're a good club and I think they're in a rebuild and can get there again, they're not going to get top four next season with their current squad. So Harry Kane wants to be fighting for trophies, similar to what Grealish wanted when he moved to Manchester City, was that if a club with the Champions League level came in, then he would want to respect their wishes. But it's all down to Tottenham now. But if I'm looking at it from a transfer perspective, they need to accept that money and move on and get some other signings for people that want to play for the club.
Yeah, 100%. Well, speaking of other signings, Lautaro Martinez at Inter, we've heard that Spurs see him as a potential Hurricane replacement. Inter have said that he is basically untouchable, but what's the situation on him?
With who? Sorry, Martinez.
Yeah.
So Martinez with Inter Milan was available for sale in the summer, but that was only if Lukaku stayed, and obviously Lukaku's moved to Chelsea for a club record, a lot of money, by the way, 115 million euros. So he's moved on, but Martinez is still young, is the youngest of the two. Has more potential in my point. He's got that kind of style to him, so he won't move on from Inter Milan because they just won't be able to get a replacement of a high level. So he will stay at Inter Milan, from what I've been told. Spurs did bid for him because he was at one point interested in going to the Premier League, but that was slowly locked down, and obviously Inter Milan have gone to the Champions League. This information about them being liquidated is absolute nonsense. They're making signings now. So with Dumfries coming in and a couple of other players coming in, so that's nonsense. So they don't necessarily need the money. I mean, they've just made nearly 200 million euros plus on Hakimi and Lukaku, so they're doing okay. They've kind of stabilised themselves in that sense, and they had to accept those bids because they're huge bids. So those two have gone, but Martinez will stay. But I can see him moving next year, if I'm honest.
Yeah. Well, moving on to someone who we've been talking about for a while now, Locatelli. It seems like every day there's new reports that Juventus are going to have a meeting with Sassuolo and Locatelli's agents, but they've still not reached an agreement. What's the latest on?
The problem is with Juventus at the moment is because they don't have a lot of money, they try to structure the deal over 2 years, but then Locatelli's club, Sassuolo, want the money up front. So they tried to work a way of being able to make sure that they get the guaranteed money that they want, which is around 35 to 40 million euros. So I expect the deal to happen, and I think we're at the conclusion of it. But it's very much on the face of the Juventus not being able to afford what Sassuolo have asked. Obviously, Locatelli could have gone to Arsenal because Arsenal were going to offer the whole money, and Sassuolo said, let's do it. But Locatelli wanted to stay in Juventus, and I understand that from an Italian point of view. So yeah, Locatelli should be going to Juventus for sure. I can't see any other clubs going for him. I know a lot of Man United fans want Locatelli, but he's not even considered high up on the list as that type of player that they want, and they know where he wants to go. So we need to dispel that rumour.
Yeah. Well, moving on to another young midfielder who I know a lot of Manchester United fans will be keen on, Camavinga, another player who we've been talking about for a while now. The reports are quite contradictory. You know, some people saying he might be heading to Real Madrid or Man United. Tell us why that is.
The problem you've got is club versus agent in this manner. And what I mean by that is that the player is firstly not in a rush to make a decision. Now, people are saying, hurry up, make a decision. This is a guy who's 18 years old, who, is now being exposed to the media. So he needs to be protected as such. And he doesn't want to rush his next move because that's an important move. So people need to understand that. I think it wants to go. This guy is 18 years old. So, give him some time to understand what he wants to do. Because at the end of the day, he wants his own career. So you've got to consider that. Now, what the issue is here is that Manchester United are fully interested in him and would pay up to 35 to 40 million euros. Have already communicated that with the club. So, Manchester United could sign this player if he says yes tomorrow, that kind of thing. The issue you've got is when's want to sell the player, but the agent doesn't mind waiting next year because either way for the agent, he's going to get an agent fee, but it works out better for him next season because he would have many clubs looking for him. So his agent fee will be higher and Camavinga can choose what clubs he wants. Now, Wentz want to sell him this summer. They've said to him in meetings, if you do not extend the contract, we will sell you this summer. So that might work into Man United's equation from what I know. And if it is the case that happens, then he will go to Manchester United. But what I will say is it's down to the player, and it's always been down to the player. And if he doesn't want to come to Manchester United, then he doesn't want to come to Manchester United. So there's no point worrying yourselves about it. But he's still, it's up to him when he wants to make a decision. It's like me, if I want to do a business venture, I do it because I want to do it, not because someone else. So it's the same scenario. We just have to wait on it. But it does look kind of positive for Man United, and we need to see if they can convince the agent and the player of their project, because they're still having phone calls with their club. So I would keep an eye out on Camavinga. There's nothing advanced yet, but as I said, that deal can be done in a blink of an eye. But the club do want to sell him this summer, and as I said, PSG, Real Madrid are not in the race at the moment for this summer. So Manchester United could possibly convince him to move.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Camavinga. But moving on, Anthony Martial, another player who we've heard rumors, which have kind of been washed off by Fabrizio Romano, but we heard rumors that clubs like Inter Milan and Spurs could be interested in signing him. What's the latest on him?
Anthony Martial's not going to go anywhere this year. The club can't really remove him on this year because they're already making some outgoings with Andres Pereira, Amad Diallo. James Garner is likely to move on for a loan. There's been some rumours about him rejecting the deal, but he hasn't. So that's nothing imminent. There's been no particular contract negotiations of that level. So Anthony Martial won't move this summer. And if he doesn't impress this year, and I fully expect him to leave next season, because Ollie's a striker himself, so he doesn't really count on Martial being a fully striker, which is understandable because he isn't for me either, if you look at it. But he would move on to somewhere like Juventus or Inter Milan for sure. So I think that's one for next summer. But Anthony Martial hopefully has a good summer for Manchester United and can reignite his career, because last season was a bit hit and miss, more of a miss, I'm afraid. But we'll have to see with him next summer. But he will definitely be staying this summer.
Yeah. What about Jules Koundé, another player who was linked to Spurs but apparently rejected them? We know Sevilla are open to selling him. He's in negotiations with Chelsea at the moment. What's the latest on him?
Yeah, Jules Koundé. All I've heard is that Chelsea need to pay more money, so they need to pay around 45 to 50 million euros. They're trying to move Tammy Hayburn on the obligation to buy, so that might help them in assisting that manner. Because remember, they've just spent nearly 100 million on Lukaku, but they have because of wages and agent fees. So they've paid nearly 110, 120 million pounds altogether, which is a lot of money. So they likely, Jules Koundé will be done in the next couple of weeks. But as I said, he's likely to move to Chelsea, because with Chelsea, if they're interested in a player, Fred, they get the player. They don't mess around. So he's likely to move on, and he's already accepted personal terms with Chelsea. It's just a matter of the fee. And I think Kurt Zuma doesn't want to be involved in the negotiations, but we have to see. There's a lot of convincing going around there. So if he doesn't, then obviously Chelsea have to pay a little bit more money on that one. But as I said, from what I know and what I've asked about, is Jules Koundé is very much on, and that deal still will happen with Chelsea at the moment. But as I said, things can change if they don't pay the negotiations fee that's been requested.
Yeah. Well, the last player we're going to talk about before you give us a bit of detail on transfer negotiations, Leon Goretzka. We know Joshua Kimmich has now officially signed a new contract with Bayern. Is Goretzka close to signing a new contract as well?
No, I can see that happening. But the longer it goes on, the longer it'll get linked to players will get linked to the likes of Real Madrid and Manchester United, because Man United offered a significant contract offer to him, and that's very much true. So when you've got that in your court, you can say to Bayern Munich, hey, Manchester United have offered me this amount of money, you've got to match it, otherwise I'm moving. So, but as I said, Goretzka and Kimmich are kind of the future midfielders for Bayern Munich. So I see him staying and making. I've not heard anything to say that he's definitely moving this summer. But as longer it goes on, the longer there's an opportunity there. So Bayern Munich are trying to do it now, try and do it in the next couple of weeks, so that they don't go into the new season, with that over their head, similar to how Man United are with Paul Pogba.
Yeah. Well, that brings us to our next thing. You say you were going to give us a bit of an insight on how transfer negotiations work with clubs?
Yeah, so this has come about because I noticed a lot of stuff in the Discord, a lot of things going on in Twitter that people were expecting signings to happen in a couple of days, and they were, they think it's very easy to make signings, or it's like going on to, let's say, FIFA and just clicking a couple of buttons and that's it, the deal's done. What you got to remember is, and I'll break this down to you, is that the first thing you do is, and there's a few stages you go through, is one, you're negotiating with the club. And at that time you're negotiating with the club, you've got to think about the following. How are you going to structure the transfers? And that's the fees are you going to do it over the years? How much you're going to pay up front, right? Pay up front, that's the first negotiation. You have to start talking about how that's going to work, what it's going to look like. So that takes a little bit of time as we go, okay? What you've got to do then is then you've got to get permission to, well, we say permission, but that's just legally how it's done, to speak to the player, okay? Within the player, you've got to talk about his contract length, okay? That takes a while in itself because they have to agree to it. Every little step has to be agreed. Then you've got to talk about bonuses, Fred. So are they going to get how many games of the bonuses? They need to talk and agree over that. And that takes a while. So this is all meetings and agents. Then they got to talk about image rights, because you might have image rights to the club that he's currently at, and they have to buy that out. You have image rights that need to be transferred over to Manchester United and not Real Madrid, for instance. We talk about Varane. And then you've got all the other stuff like goal bonuses. How much you're going to get paid. Is there going to be pay rises in the year? What type of number you're going to get? These sort of things go within the player itself. And then there's stuff like how much the agent's going to get, okay? And how you're going to pay the agent, which normally is the case. And then you've got to pay it over a certain period of time and those sort of things, okay? Then you've got to start looking at, well, okay, we've agreed all of this. We've agreed the fees with the clubs. And this is me just giving you a basic overview. It's more in depth than that. Then you've got to start booking in the medical. And remember, we're in the pandemic time, so it takes a lot longer, okay? So medicals can be done over 2 days. It can be done over 1 day, okay? So the medical's done over 2 days sometimes. Then once you've done the medical, you've got all the press releases to do. You've got to do all the contract signing, the photos, meet the players, do all the media stuff. It doesn't take 5 minutes. It can take a few days to sample. They have to get people in if they want to do productions, like the Sancho one, for instance. They got people in. Those sort of things will all go into a deal before it's completed. There's a lot that goes in on a transfer negotiations, and this is me just giving you a high level of detail. I can go on about the more details around how the player's going to travel, to get to the new club. There's loads of stuff that goes involved in it. When are they going to pay the fees over the years? What they're going to do for Real Madrid, all the image rights. There's loads of stuff that goes on. All the bonuses that they're going to receive over the years. All of these then, and also the lawyers have to look at the contracts and agree every single stage that is in the contract. And that is a lengthy process, because the lawyers will say, okay, this is legitimate. Yep, they do this. Yep, this is what you've agreed in your negotiations. Yep, this is all on point. And then you can sign this page. So then they'll speak to the agent, they'll speak to the player, sign this, then the next one, next page, yep, sign this. There's a hell of a lot that goes in on the contract negotiations. It's not just, oh, let's send a fee, the player does the medical and it's done. And that's why it takes a while. Now, just to finish off on that, and I'll focus on Man United transfers. Man United do big transfers, Fred. Sancho and Varane are big transfers. Now, people say, what's the difference of, let's say someone going to Aston Villa or Danny Ings going to Aston Villa? Well, firstly, that's a cheap fee and likely paid up front, so it's quicker to negotiate. The contract is also cheaper, and there's probably less bonuses in there, and the agent fee for those types of players are a lot lower, so the negotiations are a lot quicker in that sense. People need to understand why it takes a while for Manchester United to handle these things. And other clubs as well. Chelsea do it a little bit different, but Chelsea are more quiet on how they do the negotiations. They've been negotiating for Lukaku for about a month, and they've been negotiating with Haaland for a month because they want to make sure they get a signing. But it's just the way the PR's done, the media, and how the transfers late. look. But people need to understand that negotiations take some time, and you need to, to understand that. I know it's difficult for the normal person to say, "Oh, it should just be done," but that is, that's just me giving you a high level. I might do an article in the future just for people to understand the full process. But I hope that just clears up that there is a hell of a lot that gets involved in negotiations, because I've seen it firsthand with contract signings and how long they take. If someone's not happy with something, then it can cause 2 or 3 delay. Like, for instance, if the agent wasn't happy with the goal bonuses and the player, then that can take a day or 2, because then the lawyers have to look at changing the stuff in the contract and then negotiating that, and then making sure that's legal, and then it's all signed. And that's just a snippet of transfer negotiations. So I hope that gives you some clarity on what that is.
Yeah, it's certainly not easy. It's not like FIFA where you just walk in a room and basically send a bid in. It's a bit more detailed. But yeah, that brings us to the end of the podcast, where we just provide some transfer updates on a few players. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit the thumbs up button and subscribe and hit the notification bell. Like I said, the links to our socials will be in the description, so check that out and give us a follow on Instagram, Twitter, etc. for more news. Chris, is there anything you want to say before we close off?
Yeah, I just want to say there's a few podcasts coming out, different ones. That Barcelona podcast is coming out next week, which is exciting. I'm looking forward to watching that. And there will be a lot of transfers in the next 3 weeks, so I'm going to be busy if you don't see me that active. You might see me more on podcasts as opposed to in Discord or Twitter. So just to keep an eye on that. And I will say there's a lot of transfers, a lot of clubs still going to do business. Manchester United might still do 1 to 2 signings. Liverpool are still looking to do a couple of signings, and so are Chelsea. There's a lot of big clubs that are still looking to do some business. So keep an eye on that, and I'll keep you updated as we go. But I would just want to say, I know this has been quite short, but I appreciate you guys listening today. Again, thank you for the 500 subscribers. Well, to 1,000, here we go. Hopefully we can get there and keep putting out some new content for you. So, but again, we appreciate it, and we appreciate that you've listened, and it's been a good journey so far. And obviously, we'll keep giving you the wide transfer news, and make sure you pop into our Discord or Instagram or Twitter. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, as Chris said, some big podcasts coming up with some special guests. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you in the next podcast.